Well, one of the biggest challenges, perhaps, for Labour in government will be dealing with the UK's rather sluggish economy. Business groups have been spelling out their hopes for this new administration, with warnings that Labour needs to hit the ground running now it's back in power. Let's talk to Vicky Pryce, the London-based international economist. Vicky, good to see you. Welcome. How big a role has the UK economic situation played in this election campaign?
It must have had quite an impact on decisions that people made because, of course, like other countries, we've had the problems of COVID, we've had the problems of the energy crisis, and to some extent you could argue that the energy crisis wasn't really dealt as fast as other countries dealt with it in the UK. So prices were allowed to rise with people getting very, very worried, adjusting inflationary expectations for far too long before a cap was put on energy price, on electricity prices for households. So I think that was quite a negative for people's decisions when they were thinking about whether this government that they just voted out was on top of the economic issues or not, whether it was managing the economy properly. And of course, the cost of living crisis has been a very significant factor in all this. But when you look at other countries too, I mean, you may argue that perhaps that impact on the UK of mismanagement has been exaggerated. I think the issue is much more what's happening to public services more generally, the fact that there are these big queues for being seen by the doctor, the queues for having any expert advice on the National Health Service more generally, all sorts of issues in regard to water pollution, the postal service and so on, transport. So there have been a number of other issues which you could argue perhaps are separate, but actually they're quite linked to the way in which the economy is run, and they're linked to the fact that the government doesn't actually have now, post-COVID, post the energy crisis, enough money to remedy the problems that were created by many years of austerity back in the 2010s.
What economic policies are you expecting the new Prime Minister Keir Starmer and his new Finance Minister to prioritise?
Well, given that there isn't a huge amount of money, or they're going to look at that, because, of course, they haven't had the chance to look at in detail with what's happening in various government departments, but they are already talking about putting more money to support the National Health Service, but also putting more on investment. I think that's good news. Unlike other parties, or certainly unlike the Conservatives, what they had pledged in the manifesto was that they were going to be borrowing to invest. And there would be some money going straight away into the National Health Service. That's good news. There will be an industrial strategy, and companies will be rather pleased about that because there hadn't been any proper direction. I think that's important for anyone who may be thinking of investing in the UK, and that investment has been a problem for a long period of time. So a bit of stability, a bit of positive direction would help hugely, and I think that's what businesses are looking for. And also sort of dealing with some of the issues to do with trade. I think you raised already what's happening with Europe and the relationship there. Apologies, I have been talking rather a lot in the last couple of days. And that is going to be very important, getting a bit of a rapprochement with Europe so that trade can be facilitated. Is going to be very significant for many firms, particularly smaller firms, that have abandoned doing anything with Europe in the last couple of years because it's so difficult and so expensive.
Vicky, good to see you. Thanks so much for coming on the programme again. Vicky Pryce talking to us there from London.